Okay, you had section 13-3. This is on completing the square. This is the next method. It's kind of related to the square root method. You had numbers 1 through 29. Okay, let's try. Number 1, x to the second minus 6x. Okay, it says to complete the square. In order to complete the square, there's a blank here at the end. Whatever we put in the blank is going to make it so the two parentheses, when we factor, the two parentheses will come out exactly the same. Then it'll end up being something squared. That's what we're doing. We're completing the square. All we got to do is figure out what goes into this blank. You know, this is x and x. Now, whatever we put here has to be the same. And somehow it's going to give us this negative 6x. Negative 3 and negative 3. Negative 3 and negative 3. This is negative 3x. That's negative 3x. That's negative 6x. So this blank is going to be negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. There you go. We completed the square. That'll end up giving us x minus 3. But this is what we're looking for right there. Number 3. n to the second plus 7n. Okay, we need to fill in this blank so that the parentheses come out the same. That way it ends up being something square. We know it's m and m. M and m. Okay, so it's m and m. Whatever we put here has to be the same. It has to give us a positive 7 though. This one is tricky. 7 halves and 7 halves. Plus and plus. This right here is 7 halves m. On the outside, that's also 7 halves m. If I add that, that's 14 halves m. 14 over 2 is 7, which is what we wanted. So it's 7 halves. But what goes into the blank? We'd have to multiply it, just like we did here. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. So these multiply to give us a positive 49 over 4. I know, I hate fractions, but that's what it is. I wouldn't suggest using the decimal. Yeah, stick to the fraction on this. Just trust me on. Yeah. M plus 7 halves. You'll see that it's actually easier to work with the fraction. The decimal doesn't come out as easy, I guess. I'll show you an example later when we come upon it in the problems. Number 5. X to the second plus 4x. We need to know what goes into the blank to complete the square. Again, whatever goes in that blank will make these two parentheses the same, so it ends up being something squared. We know it's going to be x and x. The first terms have to multiply to x squared. These terms have to be the same. In order to get 4x, 2 and 2, plus and plus. So this is 2x, that's 2x, that's 4x. So the n term here is plus 4. Yeah, 2 times 2 is 4. This is what we're looking for. I'll use x. X squared minus 20x. We need to know what goes in the blank. I keep doing this because it's easier to see. Yeah. We know it's got to be the same, so x and x. We know this term here will somehow give us that negative 20. It's got to be the same. Minus 10 and minus 10. This is a negative 10. That's a negative 10. So negative 10x and negative 10x. There's the negative 20x in the middle. So the term we're looking for here is plus 100. That's what we're looking for. Number 9. X to the second plus 15x. We need the blank. We know it's x and x. If you look back, this one was the hardest one. But if you just think about how these numbers are related to the number we're looking for, you know, same idea here. This should be 15 halves. We need a positive 15. Oh wait, so here, just to prove it, this is 15 halves x. This right here is also 15 halves x. If we combine that, that's 30 halves x, and 30 divided by 2 is 15, so it works. Plus and plus, we need a positive 15. What goes in the blank? Plus 225 over 4. Yeah, I'm multiplying those two. That's what we're looking for. Okay, now we're going to start actually using this to solve problems. See how it's connected though? If we can get it to here, we can use the square root method. But not all the problems, not all the problems can be square rooted right away. You cannot do the factoring method, so that's why this is the next method here. Yeah, you got to be able to complete the square so we can use a method that we know. Okay, let's try. Number 11. Okay, yes. For those of you that tried this, yes, it is factorable. Yeah, but I'm going to prove the other method and show you that it comes out the same. And then eventually, they're going to give you problems where it's not factorable. So in which case, there's got to be a way to do it. That's the thing. When we introduced the factoring method way back in chapter 6, they were all factorable. Made it easy, even though it was new to you folks. But now that it's easy, they're giving you harder things where it's not factorable, which technically there would be more of those. So in order to do this, I'm going to get a blank here, just like I did with these. So I got to get rid of the 15. Okay, we need to complete the square. We need to figure out what goes into the blank so that these parentheses come out the same. We know it's m and m. We need to know what goes here. It's got to be the same. 4. 4 and 4 will give me 8. A plus and plus will give me a positive 8. Yeah, this is 4m, that's 4m. Okay, so what goes in the blank? 16. But it's an equation. So if I add 16 on the left side, I got to add it on the right side. So this now, negative 15 plus 16 is 1. So I have m plus 4 squared is equal to 1. Now we can use the square root method. If I square root both sides, m plus 4 equals positive and negative 1. And then I solve for m. Negative 4 plus or minus 1. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. Negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. Those are your two solutions. And yes, again, we didn't put any of the previous problems in set notation because we weren't solving for the variable. Here we are. So whenever we solve for the variable, we're looking for the set of all numbers that solve the problem. Okay. Number 13. 13 says x to the second plus 14x minus 15 equals 0. Oh, wait, hold on. Let's go back to this one real quick. Take a look at number 11. I said I'd prove it to you. Granted, it works for this, but let's just see. M squared plus 8m plus 50 equals 0. If I use the factoring method, m and m, we need a positive 15. Keep in mind we need an 8m in the middle. What goes here? 3 and 5, a plus and plus. So this is a positive 3m. Out here is a positive 5m. So that'll give us the 8m in the middle. So once we have it factored, m plus 3 equals 0 and m plus 5 equals 0. And then we solve each one separate. M equals negative 3, m equals negative 5. See, so this completing the square thing is going to work. Yeah, sometimes it's just easier to factor. And that choice is going to be up to you, but you need to know all the methods. But eventually, we're going to be coming upon problems where factoring is not possible. And that's why you need to know how to do this one. Yes, this one is factorable also. Yes. Okay, but we're going to solve it again as if, just to practice the method. We need to get a blank here so that we can complete the square. I'm going to add 15 to both sides. We need to know what goes into the blank so that the two parentheses match. We know it's x and x. These two have to be the same. It'll somehow give you 14x. 7 and 7, plus and plus. Yeah, this is 7x, 7x, that's 14x. So what goes into the blank to complete the square? 49. But if we add 49 on the left, we have to add it on the right. So that'll be 49, 59, 64. So x plus 7 squared equals 64. Now we can use the square root method. And then we solve for x. X equals negative 7 plus or minus 8. Negative 7 plus 8 is 1. Negative 7 minus 8 is negative 15. And again, just to prove, the factoring method will give us x and x. We need a negative 15 at the end. This will be 15 and 1. 3 and 5 could have worked also, but we need to get a 14 in the middle. So to get a 14 in the middle, positive, this would have to be a positive 15 and a negative 1. Yeah, so 15x, negative 1x. Okay, each of the factors equal to 0. X equals negative 15. X equals 1, which is what we had here. Okay. 15. X to the second minus 4x minus 11 equals 0. So yes, this one is not factorable. So we're going to actually have to know how to do the completing of the square. First step, we need to get a blank. Here's a blank equals 11. We need to know what goes into the blank so that the parentheses match. We know it's x and x. We need a negative 4x in the middle. So it's going to be 2 and 2, minus and minus. That means the blank has to be negative 2 times negative 2 is plus 4. But we're going to add 4 on both sides just to keep it in balance. That'll make this 15. So x minus 2 squared is equal to 15. I'm going to square root both sides. X minus 2 equals positive and negative square root of 15. X equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 15. Number 17. X squared minus 18x plus 74 equals 0. I don't think I can factor this. Doesn't matter. We're going to use the completing the square. First step, we need to get a blank here. We get rid of the 74. We need to figure out what goes into the blank so that these parentheses come out the same. X and x, we need a negative 18. 9 and 9, minus and minus. That'll give us a negative 18x in the middle. So knowing it's negative 9 and negative 9, this blank is going to be 81. We're going to add 81 to both sides. That'll give us 7. So x minus 9 squared is equal to 7. If I square root both sides, x minus 9 equals the positive and negative radical 7. And then we just get x by itself. X equals 9 plus or minus radical 7. Getting better? Let's try again. Number 19. X to the second minus 10x minus 4. Can guarantee this one doesn't factor. First step, let's get a blank. X squared minus 10x equals 4. We need to complete the square. We need to know what goes into the blank so that the parentheses match. X and x. We need a negative 10 in the middle. Minus 5 and minus 5. So that's a negative 5 and negative 5x. That's negative 10x in the middle. So the blank, negative 5 times 5, is 25. We're going to add it to both sides, though. Keep the equation in balance. So we have x minus 5 squared then is equal to 29. If I square root both sides, x minus 5 equals positive and negative square root of 29. Now we just get x by itself. Add 5 to both sides, so x equals 5 plus or minus radical 29. I'll use x. X to the second plus 7x minus 2. Let's get a blank. X to the second plus 7x equals 2. We need to know what goes here to complete the square. We know it's x and x. What goes into these blanks to give us 7x? Yeah, this is tricky. Difference here, this is odd, but the method is the same. Gotta think of how we got these numbers. 7 halves and 7 halves. Plus and plus. Okay, so that will give us 7 halves times 7 halves, 49 over 4. But we have to add it to both sides. 49 over 4. Okay, 2 is the same as 2 over 1. We cannot add unless the fractions match. This would be 8 over 4 plus 49 over 4. So x plus 7 halves squared equals 57 over 4. If I square root both sides, x plus 7 halves equals positive negative radical 57. Oh, I can square root the 4 over 2. I'm just going to subtract the 7 halves now. X equals negative 7 halves plus or minus radical 57 over 2. I'm going to shorten it up a bit. Since they both have the same denominator, I'll just combine the tops on over 1. So negative 7 plus or minus square root of 57 all over 2. Yeah, that's the answer. (23) x to the second minus 3x minus 28 equals 0. We're going to complete the square. We're going to need a blank here. Add 28 to both sides. X to the second minus 3x equals 28. We need to know what goes into that blank so that these two parentheses match. X and x. What goes here, that'll give us a negative 3x. Minus and minus. 3 halves and 3 halves. 3 halves plus 3 halves is 6 halves, which will give us 3. Okay. So the blank has to be, we're going to multiply that out. 3 times 3 is 9 over 4. That's what we're going to add to both sides. That'll complete the square. 9/4. Oh boy. This is 28 over 1. We can't add fractions unless the denominators match. So 9/4 plus 4 times 28. 112? 112. Okay. If we add that up, that's 121 over 4. This side is x minus 3 halves squared. Now we can use the square root method. X minus 3 halves equals positive and negative. Oh, I can square root the 121. That's 11 over 2. We'll add 3 halves to both sides. X equals 3 plus or minus 11. I'll just put over the same denominator. 3 plus 11 is 14 over 2. And 3 minus 11, negative 8 over 2. 7 and negative 4. Those are your solutions. I don't know if you noticed, but since it came out nice, this was actually factorable. Yeah, at the beginning, you could have noticed that, but we were practicing the square root. Completing the square. But like I said, eventually you look at the problem and then you can pick the method. But because we're on this section, we're going to practice completing the square. Just to prove, if I factor this, x and x. We need 28. 7 and 4. We need a negative 3x in the middle. So this would be a negative 7 and a plus 4. That'll give us a negative 3x. X minus 7 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. X equals 7. X equals negative 4, which is what we had here. I'll use x. Number 25, 2x to the second minus 3x minus 1 equals 0. We need to get a blank. 2x squared minus 3x equals 1. Now, the difference with this problem compared to all the ones that we did earlier, there's a 2 here. We need to get rid of that 2. I'm going to divide everything by 2. X squared minus... So, we have x squared minus 3 halves x equals 1 half. Okay, now we can complete the square. Yeah, we have a blank. The coefficient here in front of the square term is 1. We need to know what goes into the blank so that the parentheses match. Notice x and x. These two terms have to give me a negative 3 halves. For those of you that are wondering, hold the thought. We'll come back to this. I didn't point it out earlier, but all these previous problems, these numbers here was half of this. Just like that. 7 halves is half of 7. 3 halves is half of 3. All the problems, those numbers were half of that one. So if you're wondering how I got 3/4, I want half of 3 halves. Negative, negative 3 halves. Half of this, if I multiply straight across, is 3/4. That's what I put there. So if I continue with that, the blank has to be plus 9/16. 3 times 3, 4 times 4. But I have to add 9/16 on both sides. So 8/16 plus 9/16. You can't add unless the denominators match. So now I have x minus 3/4 squared equals 17 over 16. Now I can use the square root method. X minus 3/4 equals positive and negative square root of 17. Oh, we can square root to 16. Almost there. We'll add 3/4 to both sides. That cancels. X equals 3 plus or minus radical 17 over, since they have the same denominator, 4. See, you would have never gotten this answered from the factoring method. And definitely wouldn't have gotten it from guess and check. $27. 3x to the second minus 4x minus 3 equals 0. First step, we get a blank. So 3x squared minus 4x equals 3. We can't do anything unless we get a 1 here. But really, we could get anything, I guess. We need to get, it's easier with a 1. So long this is a square term, then we can factor. So yeah, the parentheses have to be the same. But the 3 doesn't work. So let's get rid of the 3. I'll divide everything by 3. X squared minus 4/3 x equals, oh, this is nice. This is 1. Okay.
it was mentioned earlier, we could use decimal, and I was suggesting we should be doing it with fractions instead. Here's an example. If we had gone with decimal, this wouldn't have come out very nice. Yeah, the other ones worked out. We divide by 2, and yeah, we'll work with a decimal. But here, 4/3, it came out to point. Oh yeah, 1.333333333333, and yeah, that's ridiculous. So working with a fraction is a better choice. Okay, what goes into the blank so that the parentheses come out the same? You know, it's x and x. Half of this, 1/2 of 4/3. Half of 4/3 is 4/6. So it's minus and minus. Oh, instead of 4/6, I'm gonna simplify 2/3. If you think about it, 2/3 is half of 4/3. So what goes in the blank? 4/9. Yep, 2 times 2, 3 times 3. We're going to add 4/9 to both sides. So 1/1. This is going to be 9/9 plus 4/9. X minus 2/3 squared equals 13/9. Now we can square root. Positive and negative square root of 13/3. If I add 2/3 to both sides, x equals 2 plus or minus square root of 13/3. Yeah, as much as we hate working with the fractions, fractions is the better choice. Last one, number 29. Two x to the second minus 5x minus 12 equals 0. We get a blank first. Quit. Next step. We try to get a 1 here. Get rid of the 2. We'll divide everything by 2. X squared minus 5/2 x equals 6. We need to fill the blank. We need to complete the square. X and x. We want half of 5/2. We know it's minus and minus. 5/4. So to complete the square, the blank has to be 25/16. That's what we add to both sides. We need a common denominator. This would be 96/16. X minus 5/4 squared equals, well, what is it? 11 carried 121/16. We'll square both sides. Positive and negative 11/4. We're going to add 5/4 to both sides. So 5 plus 11 will give us 16/4. 5 minus 11 is negative 6/4. So our two solutions are 4 and negative 3/2. It came out relatively nice. So technically we could have factored this. I don't know if anybody recognized, but yes, it was possible. Two x and x. Okay, we need a negative 12 at the end. 4 and 3. We need a negative 5 in the middle. Negative 8, positive 3. Yeah, that'll give us negative 5 in the middle. 2x plus 3 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. So x equals 4. Divide by 2. X equals negative 3/2, which is what we had there. Okay, hope that helped. See you in the next one.